This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. I am here with the awesome and amazing Lee Salz, author of the fantastic book, Sales Differentiation. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, David. You know why I'm doing so great? Because look what I just got.
Ooh, the Do It Speaking
Love
book.
it.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Well, so we have a mutual admiration society going on because we're talking all about your fantastic book called Sales Differentiation. And the subtitle should especially intrigue people. It is 19 powerful strategies to win more deals at the prices you want. So I know you talk about this in the book, but as a marketing guy, I have to ask you, when I hear the word differentiation, I figure, well, that's a marketing thing. Articulation, distinction, differentiation. How are we better, cooler, faster? And you're saying, no, hang on. The sales folks need to understand and deploy sales differentiation. Tell us about the difference there. Tell us about some common myths about, hey, that's not really our job when we're selling.
Absolutely. And you and every executive I speak with, as soon as the subject of differentiation comes up, their minds always go, whoosh, marketing. And they're not wrong. It's just they're limited in their beliefs. I believe there's two types of differentiation. There's marketing differentiation and there's sales differentiation. And they're related, but dare I say they're also different. So marketing differentiation is one-directional communication for the masses. It screams, hey, look at us, we're here, right? That's the purpose of a website, collateral material. It screams to the marketplace, pay attention to us. It lays out all the potential of what the relationship could be. But sales differentiation is two-directional communication with an individual buyer. It builds off marketing differentiation and personalizes the experience. So it takes all the potential of what could be and narrows it down to what should be for this individual in this circumstance.
So it sounds like we have to do a little bit more homework than we might otherwise be used to doing.
True. And there's actually two components of sales differentiation. There's sales differentiation in what you sell, and that's understanding what your differentiators are, when they're relevant, to whom they're relevant, and most importantly, being able to communicate it in a meaningful way so that the person on the other side of the desk is as excited about it as you are. So I'll give you an example. I live in the frozen tundra, Minneapolis, where we're freezing, in the house, out of the house. It's cold. I moved here from the East Coast. I originally grew up in New York and New Jersey and relocated here about 16 years ago. And one of the smartest things I did, David, see, we've got a couple of dogs, is I hired a service to do what's called a spring cleanup. See, we let the dogs go in the backyard and do their thing, and there is no way I'm going out in the middle of winter and picking up dog poop. So I found this company, they call it a spring cleanup, and they pick up all the dog poop. And for years, I used the same company. And this past spring, I called to schedule service, and they didn't respond for whatever reason. And David, would you believe I got an email from one of their competitors? Who would have thought that this is a competitive business offering to provide the same service, same price? I said, this isn't rocket science. We could use somebody different this year. So I contract with them. Now, the company I had been using, I appreciated that they had always picked up the dog poop, but there was always one thing about it I didn't like. They'd pick it all up and they'd leave giant bags of the dog poop on the side of the house left for me to discard. So you pick it up, you put the bag in the garbage cans in your garage, and it starts to thaw. And so you can imagine what the garage now smells like. So this company, I contracted with them, guy comes out, picks up all the dog poop, and he's leaving. I said, what are you doing? He says, what do you mean, what am I doing? I'm done. I said, yes, but you're taking the dog poop. He said, yeah, that's what we do. And I said, oh my gosh, you take the poop? David, it made my day. No, it made my week knowing that I didn't have to deal with that. So that afternoon, I get a call from the owner of the small business, customer service call saying, how'd we do? They said, oh, you did just great. But I got to ask you, do you compete against this other company? He says, oh, yes, we run into them all the time. And I said, do you know what your biggest differentiator is compared to them? He says, no, I can't think of anything. I said, you take the poop. He says, oh, yeah, I think I knew that. I said, well, you got to talk about that when you're selling. Ask people what their expectation is with respect to discarding of the waste once you pick it up, because most people expect industry standard. David, now this is an industry. That industry standard is you pick it up and take it with you. But we know at least one of your competitors doesn't do that. But if you remember what I said, that email offered to provide the same service, same price. That really wasn't the same service, was it?
Right.
I would have paid more for that. And no, I didn't tell that small business owner. I gave him free consulting. Let someone else pay more.
Right.
But I see this so often in sales. We have all these differentiators, and we don't develop compelling strategies so that they're meaningful to the person who's buying. And in the absence of that, there's only one conversation you're going to have, which is price. I bet you weren't expecting to talk about dog poop today.
No, but I think it's really, really important. And in fact, when I'm talking to folks who want to get involved with more speaking, I say, you need to tap into the association world. And I said, there's an association for every industry. And then on the slide that I have, I said, there's even an association of the home pooper scooper companies. And the acronym is APAWS, APAWS. This stands for the Association of Professional Animal Waste Specialists.
Oh, my goodness.
So you were talking to two members of the Association of Professional Animal Waste Specialists, or APAWS. So if there's a home pooper scooper company association, trust me, friends, there's an association of your target market also.
I learned something today. When I said it was an industry, who knew it really is? Thank you.
Who knew? So your book is broken up into two parts. And what we're talking about here is the first part about differentiating what you sell. And then the second part, which we'll get to in a little bit, is differentiating how you sell. But while we're still on this what you sell part, so obviously, I think any company, any individual, they're doing the best that they can, providing the product or the service the way that they know how. Should we be doing a competitive scan to figure out what other competing and alternative companies are doing and are not doing the way you just described? Or how does that work? How do we start getting the market intelligence to do this?
Yeah, there's two exercises that I recommend doing. So one is a competitive analysis, and it's very simple. 2 columns on a sheet. Why you win and why they win. And price can't be on either side of the ledger, because we all know we can justify something if we see meaningful differences. Like when a salesperson says, I lost because of price, they really didn't lose it. What they were given was constructive criticism. You didn't provide enough value in what you sell and how you sell it to justify the price that you just put in front of me. So step one is the competitive analysis. Main reasons why you win, main reasons why they win. Second exercise is to look at the decision influencers in your sales process. This is anyone and everyone who affects the decision to buy what you're selling. Again, we're going to take 2 columns. On the left side, what is it that's keeping each one of these people up at night that you can address? So it's not just up at night, it's in the world that you can address. And the right side is how you can help address that particular issue for them. The synergy between what's keeping them awake and what you bring to the table. When you go through those 2 exercises, in the competitor one, in the why you win side, you just found areas for differentiation, because why would they have bought from you rather than the alternative if these truly weren't differentiators that you possess? In the second one, on the right-hand column, where you have the list of the synergies between what's keeping them awake at night and what you provide, you found other areas where you have potential differentiators. You mine all that data out, And now you have the raw material to begin putting together a sales differentiation strategy.
Hey, this interview is a real moneymaker. If you're serious about ramping up your reach and revenue as a speaker, trainer, or expert, book a confidential speaker strategy call with our team. The link is doitmarketing.com/call. It will be the most valuable 45 minutes you invest in your speaking-driven business. Speaking of value, let's get back to the show. It sounds like we really need to tap into what buyers want and what buyers value. Because when you were telling the pooper scooper story, in my mind, I'm like, well, that's just table stakes. Doesn't everybody take away the poop? And the assumptions that we make about what's happening and what's being offered by competing and alternative people are often wrong. They're often wrong. You're like, oh my God, you don't take away the poop? So, for example, let's look at something very mundane like building a website. I talk to a handful of website companies. I say, by the way, do you optimize the website for search engines? They go, no, we don't do that. That's an extra charge. Then I talk to somebody else. Do you optimize your websites for search engines? They say, of course we do. That's baked in. That's included. What kind of company doesn't do that?
Exactly.
And again, like you, I'm giving them the free consulting going, a lot of companies don't do that. But nowhere on your website did I see integrated search engine optimization. We set you up. We put the keyword research. We optimize the pages. We optimize the blogs. We make sure that when people type in the first handful of keywords, your site comes up higher than it would ordinarily. Not everyone includes that? No, not everyone includes that. So do we do a little secret shopping? Is that also part of this possibly or no?
I think that's a part of it, but it also brings me to one of the foundation components of sales differentiation, which is that people don't know how to buy what you sell. So I'd love to ask audiences, I'll be doing a keynote, and I'll ask to raise your hand if you can tell me the difference between a regular apple and an organic apple. And rarely do I see more than 2 or 3 hands go up. This is a product we buy every week, and we don't know how to make an educated decision on an apple. You think they know how to buy what you're selling? So because of that, we have both an obligation and an opportunity. I believe if you're in sales, you have an obligation to help people make an informed buying decision. But that also then gives you an opportunity to shape buyer decision criteria because they don't know how to buy what you're selling. They don't know what to ask. We've all been in those situations where we've had to buy various things and you don't even know the first question to ask and to put yourself in a situation where you can make an informed buying decision.
So creating things like checklists or a decision guide or, let's say we're selling swimming pools, the 17 things to look for before buying your first pool. Exactly. Will the company do this? Does the company offer that? Is your pool guaranteed for X, Y, and Z? These are answering questions that most buyers don't even think to ask.
Absolutely. So I have some clients in the B2B space. They deal with RFPs a lot. And what I counsel them to do is to write an RFP template as if they were procuring what they sell. And in the template, you put in all the questions that someone needs to ask to make an informed decision. And of course, you include the key questions that map back to you as well. Over the years, I've had clients where we've provided that template, and in the footer where it says, insert your company name here, they didn't even do that. They just took our template and put it on the street. And others pulled questions from it and prepared their own. And whether they used it at all, it didn't matter. I differentiated myself because, number one, I've demonstrated expertise. Number two, I've been helpful, right? And three, I provided them guidance so that they feel confident in making an informed buying decision.
So let's do a little meta activity. I definitely want to get back to the other great things that are in the book, because one of the things that we're talking about here is, I love what you say about the sales crime theory and some of these other things in the book. But if we were differentiating your particular kind of sales development, sales training program, because there's a million sales trainers and there's a million marketing consultants like me. Mm-hmm. But let's go to Lee World. Mm-hmm. When you're saying, well, we have you could get sales training from a whole bunch of people. When you're in the hot seat and you're looking at a company or a large organization that needs some sales training and sales consulting, walk us through the process and the framework that you use to differentiate sales differentiation or the kind of sales improvement that you do versus what they think they would get from any other sales training goofball?
That's a great question. So the first thing I tell them is I'm not a sales trainer. That's the first thing. I position myself as a sales manager and strategist because so many managers and company owners, they have this vision. I'm going to bring a sales trainer in and they're going to spend a day, 2 days with my sales team and boom, all my sales problems go away. In reality, that doesn't happen. I use this metaphor going back to high school science class. Do you remember the heated atoms exercise where they give you a flask and a Bunsen burner and you'd heat up water? And what did the atoms do? They just go crazy, bouncing off all the walls. There wasn't a defined way for them to behave. So as soon as you took the heat away, they returned back to a static state. And that's what happens when you bring in a sales trainer, when you haven't defined what your process and your framework should be. So what I do, I'm the guy who's helping them put together their overall sales strategy, the process steps and the tools. So let's get them excited to do something very specific that you want, as opposed to developing a lot of energy that gets wasted.
This also reminds me, Lee, of when people talk about dog training. He
Mhm.
says, well, a good dog trainer is not really a dog trainer. I rehabilitate dogs and I train the owner.
That's very true.
Right? Because like the dog has been confused and screwed up and all kinds of mixed signals. We try and get the dog squared away, and then we train you to be a better sales manager.
Yes, that's right.
So that is huge. That is really, really huge. And I think people need to think through that buying criteria. But a lot of times, here's what I run into with my clients. They're so focused on what they want to sell that they totally don't even look at or respect what that buyer really wants to buy.
That's true.
So everything in your book is a buyer-centric flip on what you say, what you sell, how you sell it. And it's not about the product, the program, the service. It's about the value, the impact, the result, the outcome, the transformation that prospect, they already know they want it. You're simply there to shorten the path and accelerate the speed to which they get an outcome that they already know they want.
Exactly.
So it sounds like there's a lot less convincing and persuading and, pulling and yanking on the prospect. And it's more like you're guiding them down a path where they're buying something that they really, really want.
That's a good description. So sticking with that sales trainer example that you asked about a moment ago, the first question I ask when someone reaches out to me and says, hey, want to talk to you about sales training, I don't say yippee. I say, why do you think you need a sales trainer? And then on the back end, I say, imagine I'm walking out the door. I'm done. What's the plan to reinforce what I've just done? Because if there isn't a reinforcement plan, all your money's been wasted. And they're so used to being an experience where someone just, hey, I want to spend money. You want money? And we have a very easy solution. But when someone pushes them a little bit to take a step back, say, well, let's slow some things down here and figure out, when you say training, what are you really thinking you need? We need closing training. You mean your people can't say the words, may I have the business, please? What do you really think the issue is? And so often there's a difference between what's a symptom and what's the real issue, right? Closing issues aren't really closing issues. It's a symptom of a discovery issue that if we did a better job up front, closing happens naturally.
So true. So true. Let's talk a little bit, because I want you to dig into the second part of the book under the
Sure.
how you sell category, the sales crime theory. What is the
Okay.
sales crime theory and how can we benefit from learning about that?
Okay. So imagine it's 2 a.m. and there's a pounding on your front door, David. It's the police. They want to talk with you about a crime that's recently been committed. Now, they don't randomly pick you and your home for this conversation. They've looked at the evidence, put together a crime theory, which has led them to you for a conversation right now. And that's the core premise behind a sales crime theory, is that there is a reason why we're picking up the phone right now, not just randomly saying, boy, do they want to buy some stuff from me? So we need to first identify the types of evidence that if we came across it would scream to us that they should want to have a conversation with us right now. As a matter of fact, that's the core question I give to salespeople. Before you pick up the phone, answer this question. Why should they want to have a conversation with you right now? Not why should we talk with them, because that would be egocentric. Why should they want to talk with us right now? So I'll give you an example. Imagine you sell audiovisual equipment for conference rooms. Well, what is the evidence that if you came across it would tell you that they should want to talk with you? So let's say they acquire someone, they expand, they're relocating. If any of those things are going on, there's probably a conversation happening about the technology in the conference room. And since that's what we offer, they should want to have a conversation with us right now. That's the premise of the sales crime theory.
Super quick commercial break. Isn't this interview amazing? If you'd like to get more ideas on how to start or grow your speaking business fast, pop over to our free training at doitmarketing.com/webinar. So this is about just doing some intelligent prospecting and looking for trigger events, looking for DNA markers of when have our clients called us, under what circumstances and situations.
That's right.
And then looking forward, who else is going through a similar situation or transformation?
That's right.
That just like, kind of a pattern recognition exercise,
Yes.
based on these couple of criteria, this is when people typically call us.
That's correct.
So why not reverse engineer that process and then proactively prospect just the prospects that are going through that situation?
David, you make my job so easy.
I love that. Well, and this also speaks to not everyone is a prospect, but then you've added a timing element to it. Not everyone is a prospect right now, but there are prospects right now that unless you're tuned in to these situational kind of external conditions. So let's say you read the Business Journal and, perfect example of what you just said, XYZ company is relocating. They're getting an extra 20,000 feet downtown.
Right.
And has a whole bunch of sellers, whether you sell soundproofing equipment, technology, wall-to-wall carpeting, cleaning service, the imagination just runs wild. That's a trigger that a certain group of companies and a certain group of sellers will have an opportunity to get into that account. As opposed to just smiling and dialing and calling random companies 365 days a year. Hi, you need cleaning service? Hi, you need cleaning service? You're going to have a much higher hit rate when it's relevant at that moment, correct?
Absolutely. And one of the challenges is most salespeople don't recognize who their toughest competitor is. And I'll say, tell me, who's your toughest competitor? And they'll rattle off 3 names and I'll tell them, I'm sure each one of those companies are tough competitors, but there's one even tougher. And someone will say, oh, you mean that sales trainer one, the status quo, the choice to do nothing. Also a tough competitor, but there's one even tougher. And some will say ourselves. And they're right. If we don't have the right mindset, we can be a tough competitor, but there's even one that's tougher, even more formidable. And I've never had any salesperson, any executive, any sales manager guess that competitor. You want to take a shot, David?
Man, that's a high bar. I'm going to let you take this one home.
Fair enough. It's every salesperson calling the same person you are trying to get a meeting. See, we're egocentric when we think about the competition. Let's flip it to the other side of the desk. You're calling on CIOs. CIOs are getting calls and emails from salespeople representing their entire purview of responsibilities and beyond. All of them selling one thing, FaceTime, right? The ability to have a meeting either by phone or in person. And I'll give you a little history lesson here. In the history of business, there has never been an executive hired with the sole responsibility of meet with salespeople every hour on the hour, right? We're an interruption. No one is staring at their phone saying, oh my gosh, please let a salesperson call me right now. It's never happened. So we're competing not with a few, but hundreds, maybe even thousands of salespeople calling on that individual trying to get a meeting. So we've got to be different right in that first interaction. And that's what the sales crime theory gives you the tools to do.
So it's calling the right prospect for the right reason at the right time.
Absolutely.
And being much more strategic. I love, Lee, that book sort of tracks through, like you just said, from the very first contact, all the way through negotiating, all the way through closing, all the way through objection handling. There is a sales differentiation strategy at every step of the process. Talk about objections and objection handling and how sales differentiation can help us there.
Absolutely. So the first thing is, if you believe that objections exist, there's your first issue. When you hear objection, you've heard no. So what's your strategy? Well, I'm going to put on the gloves and we're going to fight this out because they're going to buy or cry, one of the two. Those are the only two options. But I'll ask salespeople that say, yes, I encounter objections. And I say, are you also a relationship builder? Oh, yes, I build relationships. So let me understand this correctly. You overcome objections, you're beating up buyers, and then you expect a hug on the back end? It's completely illogical. So it's more than words. We have to have a mind shift to the word concerns. And the mind shift that comes with that is, we didn't hear no. What we heard is, help me. And we sit on the same side of the desk and help them to navigate the issue. Now, what we like to do with concerns in sales is we bury our heads in the sand and pray that they're not going to come up. But if you think about this, if there's a set of concerns that you know come up more than 50% of the time, why would you ever let them come up? Because the only thing you can do then is respond. And responding is a defensive posture. No matter what your answer is, you're in a defensive posture. And so often I find that salespeople have meaningful differentiators and they wind up being caught flat-footed because they don't address points head on. And then they lose all the power of that. I'll give you an example. So I have a client in the oil and gas space, and the work that they provide is highly sensitive. It's the kind of thing where these oil and gas companies don't want to end up on the news. So what they do as a strategy for their clients is they have confidentiality agreements. They will never disclose who they're providing services to, and their clients really appreciate that. But imagine you're selling for this company. You can't say who the clients are, right? So you go into this meeting and you let that question come up. Well, who are you providing services to? Well, we have confidentiality provisions. We can't tell you. So now you sound defensive. But what if we were proactive and upfront said, one of the things that clients really appreciate about us is that we have confidentiality agreements. So we never let the question come up. We have confidentiality agreements, and this is designed to keep you out of the news. And if you were to contract with us, you would have that same provision in your agreement as well. Same data point, confidentiality. We let them bring it up, and we're seen as defensive. We bring it up, and we get all the benefits of that meaningful differentiator.
So it's almost like we can make a list of objections and then creatively think of how to frame them, not as weaknesses, but as strengths or as differentiators. And then when they say, oh, but could I? Oh, no, you just said. Right. And they almost like apologize for even asking because you just said to them, confidentiality, everything is locked up. We keep you out of the news. Your name is never mentioned to another prospect because we value the trust that you've placed in us. I love that. But it's really about you. The phrase that comes to mind here, Lee, is nothing to fear and nothing to hide. So you bring up the elephant in the room before they do, you can ride the elephant right over the finish line.
And you know what the biggest elephant is that we try to hide from?
Tell me.
Price, right?
Let's go there. Let's talk about that.
Prospects, they always want to know price too early in the process where we either haven't developed a scope or we haven't differentiated ourselves. And if the price question comes up, we have two choices, right? We tell them and we lose because we haven't differentiated ourselves. Or we refuse to tell them and we annoy them and they go away because of how we responded.
Right.
We can't let that question come up. We have to proactively tell them when they're going to know the price and why that's the milestone of when they're going to know that price.
So in other words, there's two options here. Option number one is you've got fixed pricing for your various things.
Right.
And you either send that ahead or you don't make that a big secret. If there is variable pricing, then you say, by the end of, so people do this with speakers and consultants all the time, right? They call you up and go, Lee, we got a keynote coming up in September. How much is it? Right? So you say, well, if we chat for about 15 minutes, figure out exactly what you want and need, I'd be happy at the end of that 15 minutes to sharpen my pencil, send you a specific proposal with some specific pricing options. Would that be okay with you? So something like that, right? Where we say, well, first let's discuss what you want. and I'm not going to keep the prices secret at a certain point in time. I am going to show you the pricing, and then we'll put our heads together and figure it out.
Even before the question comes up. In other words, I'm suggesting even before they mention price, we'd say, David, I'm sure a big question on your mind is, how much is it to have me speak at your upcoming conference? I'd be wondering the same thing. Well, there's several variables that come into play in putting together that pricing. If we could talk for 15 minutes, I'll be able to share that number with you based on your answers.
And then is it sometimes also, now we're kind of getting into some inside baseball here, but do you sometimes give them a range instead of a hard number, depending on what do you want before the event? What do you want at the event? What do you want after the event? How else can I serve you? Are you buying books? Are you not buying books? Because that would make a difference. Are you kind of giving a range instead of just a number?
If they're insistent on having something up front, I'll give them a range that's big enough that they can't make any kind of decision based on it.
Could be anywhere from $300,000 to $300,000.
Yeah, perfect. Because there's so many variables that come into play, and it's not me playing games with them. That just like all the examples that you shared, all of those are factors that would affect pricing.
Wow. I mean, really, really, really good. I want to wrap up with two final questions. The final question is, how do people get connected and stay connected to more Lee Salz brilliance? And we'll talk about that in a minute. But even before we get to that, second to last question, if folks were to take one central idea from this entire concept and your fabulous book around sales differentiation, what is the key sales differentiation concept that you would love to have stick?
So it comes back to the second half of the book. And the overarching theme is how you sell, not just what you sell, differentiates you. And this is a challenge I give to my audiences. I give it to my direct clients. And it's this. Look at every interaction you have between yourself and a buyer, every touch point, and ask yourself this question. What is it that we could do different than the competition that buyer would find meaningful? Not different for the sake of different. What is it we could do different than the competition that our buyer would find meaningful? And look at the whole purchasing experience. And I don't care if it's B2B, B2C, business to government, whatever it is. And look at it as an experience, a buying experience with you, not just a transaction. And that second half of the book gets into a lot of that.
Well, again, the book is Sales Differentiation. We're going to link up all kinds of resources that Lee is about to share right under this episode when you go to thespeakingshow.com. Lee, where can we send people? What resources and goodies can we put in their hands?
To connect with me, if you go to salesarchitects.com, that's plural, ARCHITECTS.com. If you are intrigued by the book Sales Differentiation, wherever you buy a copy in whatever format, whether it be hardcover, Kindle, or audiobook, go then to salesdifferentiation.com. There's a free video series that I have for book purchasers. Once a week for a year, probably even longer because I enjoy making these videos. You'll get an email with a link to a video that will help you implement sales differentiation strategy.
There you go. Gold mine, my friends. Gold mine. Get the book, connect with Lee, get on his email list, follow this man on social media. You're going to get a whole bunch of new stalkers right now, my friend. I hope you're ready.
I'm ready.
It's going to be people that are ready to escape the price-driven sale, stop the craziness, and start to really distinguish themselves. I'll tell you, the thing I love about your whole approach and the way that you've written the book and even little pull quotes and sidebars that are in the book, at every turn, you really operationalized one of the mantras that I talk about, but I'm never really sure how to do it. So people should read your book to figure out how to do it. It's this. Don't worry about being a better salesperson. Be a better person and you'll sell more.
That's
right? Be more relatable, be more human, be more connected, be more empathetic. There's no better book. If you want the handbook of how to be a better person in sales, it is Sales Differentiation from my buddy Lee Salz. Thank you, my friend. Great to have you on.
David, thank you so much. It was a privilege.
Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.